What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well over you. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you're excited. Today is Monday, July 25th, 2022, and training camp season is here. The Dallas Cowboys heading for Oxnard, California for training camp to begin. It's been a long wait as we've kind of made our way through the offseason. In some ways, this offseason has felt shorter than others. In some ways, it's felt longer than others. But either way, it is nice for it to be over with training camp finally here, like we said. And since training camp is here, we have a whole new slew of things throughout the Blogging the Boys universe for you. A quick reminder, again, my name's RJ Ochoa. You can see me and hear me all throughout the Blogging the Boys universe. This is our YouTube channel, and every single day, every weekday, we're going to have a live show for you. BTB Live is what we're calling it. Updates, discussion, news, whatever needs to be talked about in any way, shape, or form. We'll be here sometime in the afternoon as soon as all of the things from the day have kind of come out and sort of, landed on our plates. And we have a few things to get to today. Our Blogging the Boys podcast network is full and ready to rock. We have two different shows that drop for you every single day, one at 8 a.m. Eastern and one at 4 p.m. Eastern. We also have a daily show there as well that is kind of along the lines of this. It's called Dallas Cowboys Daily, and the whole premise is, again, to get you caught up. We know that you're busy. We know that you have things to do. You've got to, drive to work, hit the gym, drop the kids off, whatever. So every morning we drop a podcast. It's about 5 to 7 minutes long that gets you updated on all of the latest Dallas Cowboys news. This will be a little bit different. You'll get to hang out with me and whoever else joins us as the season goes on. But since training camp is here, the season is here, and so we figured what better time to start than right now. So let's go ahead and get to the latest headlines in the world of the Dallas Cowboys from around the internet. And on Monday, the internet has decided to argue over where different quarterbacks rank, and this is a subject that is always full of some discourse. ESPN had their positional rankings. They didn't just do quarterbacks. They did everybody else. A lot of people like to put together their quarterback rankings, and where Dak Prescott comes in is obviously the subject of much consternation. But one of my favorite quarterback rankings or evaluations comes from The Athletic's Mike Sando. Mike Sando puts together a quarterback tiers list where he slots quarterbacks into tiers based on evaluations and discussions and input from people around the league, much like ESPN's Insiders List did when they had Dak Prescott ranked where they did. But Mike Sando puts them into tiers. Tier 1 is obviously the best of the best, and so on and so forth. And Dak Prescott came in the second tier this year, and the write-up on him is rather interesting. As we take a look from, again, the Athletics quarterback tiers, Mike Sando, the author here, you should go give this a read whenever you have a chance. Very interesting I guess opinion you could call this when it comes to Dak Prescott. Here we go. There was a point last season when Prescott seemed to be gaining as a potential tier 1 candidate. Again, he's in their second tier here. Perhaps it was a calf injury that set him back. Whatever the case, the momentum stalled and Prescott wound up back where he's been for years as a solid tier 2 quarterback struggling to crack the top 10. He played like how he always does, a head coach said. He's a solid player, really solid. He's not going to change and all of a sudden become something more special. He's had a premium setup, premium offensive line, premium skill position players, and you know what he has done. He's been really solid, and they've won a ton of football games. He has legitimate intangibles in terms of his leadership and toughness, and he's a good player. It's possible Prescott will ascend this year after healing fully from the serious leg injury he suffered in 2020 and the calf injury that slowed him more recently. I think he is a 2, that's tier 2, which is not bad, a personnel director said. Some of these teams that have tier 1 quarterbacks, the line is okay to questionable, and they are still producing, whereas Dak has generally had a talented offensive line, and he still gets that mixed performance. Now, there's more to this that we're going to get to in a moment here, but I do think it's important to address some of the misconceptions about Dak Prescott that some people in the national media tend to have, right? They don't follow, their given teams as closely as we do. We obviously follow the Dallas Cowboys more than anybody else, and so I think it's a little bit unfair to say that Dak has always had premium weapons. I think that's something that a lot of people who come in from a 30,000-foot perspective like to say, oh, Dak has, look at his offensive line. He's had the best offensive line in the NFL since he came to the league. He has Zeke Elliott. He has, these talented wide receivers. I think we forget, not only has this offensive line gotten worse. I mean, Dak inherited, there's no question about it, in 2016, arguably the best offensive line in the NFL at the time. And while, yes, Tyron Smith is still here, Zach Martin is still here, there's been a lot of turnover and a lot of change. I think it's forgotten that Dak Prescott center, who was an all-world talent in and of his own right, in Travis Frederick, literally had to miss a season. That literally happened and kind of surprised the team. And shout out to Joe Looney for coming in and playing extremely well there in 2018. But there's been this kind of long-term question mark at left guard when it's come to Connor Williams, and he's basically, been fine, and I think he's still a little bit underrated as far as his time as a Cowboy is concerned. And Lyle Collins has been really untrustworthy. Dak Prescott missed a lot of 2020, obviously, but Lyle Collins missed the entire year. We're going to talk about Lyle in a little bit. Tyron Smith basically missed the entire year. This idea that he's had this amazing offensive line is really ridiculous. I mean, we talk so much about Tyron Smith's health and how not dependable it is and how it's scary for the Cowboys to kind of bank on it the way they're doing here in 2022. Dak Prescott has never had Tyron Smith for an entire season. The last time Tyron Smith played an entire season for the Dallas Cowboys was 2015, the year before Dak Prescott arrived. And so, I don't think it's fair. From a wide receiver perspective, I mean, I guess you could say at the very beginning he had a pretty legitimate cast of characters around him. Obviously, Des Bryant, Terrence Williams, Cole Beasley, Jason Witten, who was still closer to his prime than he obviously, became there near the end. But the team cut Des Bryant. I mean, we've talked about that many different times. In 2018, the Cowboys went with their wide receiver by committee that really failed them, that forced them to trade for Amari Cooper. And yes, they did that. And yes, they gave Dak Prescott a star wide receiver in that sense. But look at what they've done now. They traded him away, and they're making him go at this with CeeDee Lamb, who we all have a lot of faith in, Michael Gallup, who's coming off of the injury, and a rookie in Jalen Tolbert. Drew Ray, thank you for joining us. As my quarterback will solidify his legacy with bringing us our longest awaited title in our history, number 6. Hey, I hope that happens. I really do. But I want to get to the second part of this because there is, I think, some talking out of both sides of the mouth here, proverbially, from these people involved in the assessment in the quarterback tiers. Here we go. One coach thought the Cowboys' offense becomes more predictable later in the season as the team repeats plays. A quarterback's coach who placed Prescott in tier 1, so this person seemingly views Dak as among the very best quarterbacks in the NFL, noted that Prescott kept the Cowboys competitive even though their offensive line had fallen off and the team had disproportionate resources stuck in an unproductive running back. This voter called Prescott's footwork impeccable and admired how the quarterback adjusted coming off of a serious injury that limited his mobility. I don't think there's a major flaw in his game, but I'm not sure if he has truly hit that upper echelon, a defensive coach said. I think he is a very healthy 2, a 2+. He has never really made that leap. I have a lot of respect for Kellen Moore. I think he does a good job. It just seems like every time they have their chance to really put it together and elevate it, they fall short. So I don't know. Again, highly encourage you to go read Mike Sando's quarterback tiers in The Athletic. It's really great perspective, I think, on every quarterback, but obviously we have a high level of interest in Dak Prescott. But that is such a great point. I mean, the Cowboys have seen the production of Zeke Elliott decline year over year over year ever since they drafted him in 2016. And while we can sit here and relitigate that, we're not going to. That has an impact on Dak Prescott. Dak has seen his front office not necessarily help him out in the ways that other teams have. And so, I think, Dak was ultimately here in this quarterback tiers list ranked 11th as far as individual rankings of quarterbacks. I don't think that Dak Prescott's the 11th best quarterback in the NFL. I would have him higher than that. I have no qualms if you want to, looking at my helmet set here, if you want to put Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady ahead of him, I think they're the only quarterbacks in the NFC who I would take over Dak. I know Matthew Stafford won a Super Bowl. I don't buy him being more talented than Dak Prescott. I would definitely not put Kyler Murray over him, especially after the homework provision that came out just before we went live here today. I think Kirk Cousins is underrated in the NFC, but I still would not obviously put him ahead of Dak Prescott. In the AFC, obviously there's a lot of talent. You got to put Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen ahead of Dak Prescott, so we're up to 4. If you want to put Joe Burrow, I'm not going to argue with you. If you want to put Justin Herbert, I'm not going to argue with you. I would not take Lamar Jackson. I think that Lamar is highly talented, and I would have him right behind Dak Prescott. The Deshaun Watson thing is whatever, disgusting, and if you want to evaluate him as a quarterback, fine. I still would take Dak Prescott over Deshaun Watson as far as the quarterbacks are concerned. I would obviously take Dak the person, and so I think that Dak is somewhere around maybe the 6th or 7th or 8th best quarterback on a given day. I did a TikTok about this on Monday, and I think that quarterbacks 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 generally kind of fluctuate. I think whoever the 6th or 7th best quarterback is, some weeks is the 6th or 7th best quarterback, but I think some weeks they're 10th or 11th. I think there's a clear tier, right? To stick with the subject and the verbiage at hand, there's a clear tier of your Mahomeses and Allens and Rodgerses, but I do think that Dak is in that next tier. And if you wanted to put guys like Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert because you don't think they've done it as much or to the same degree as the others, I'd be fine with that. But I think 11th is pretty harsh. I would not put Dak that low, but hey, that's just me and my cup of tea. David Holden says, yo, let's go Cowboys. Yo, David. Yo to everybody. Again, a reminder, we're going to be live every single day here on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. Please do subscribe. We'll be live every single weekday starting today, starting Monday, July 25th, because football season is here. So we'll be doing this every day. Look forward to hanging out with you all. But let's move on. Enough with the quarterback tiers rankings. Something else that popped up, I will be the first to tell you, if you go back, if you listen to the things I said a year ago, if you watch some of our videos here on the YouTube channel, some of the shows I did with other people and friends and fellow content creators, I was not that in on Randy Gregory a year ago and his production. And the reason for that wasn't because I didn't believe in Randy Gregory, the player. It was just because we hadn't seen it in a long time. He hadn't played an entire season in a long time. And so I was a little bit bearish on that. I didn't know what we were going to get from him. We obviously got an incredible performance that was so stunning and so amazing that we were so bummed when he left for the Denver Broncos. And that was a really big, obviously, kind of cloud hanging over this offseason for a really long time. And I don't feel the same, but I do feel a little bit similarly when it comes to Sam Williams. Obviously, a Cowboys second-round draft pick. I know there's a lot of people, a lot of you who are believing that Sam is going to come in and just be amazing right away, and that could happen. And if it does, I will be happy alongside you and be happy to say that I was not necessarily betting against that, but didn't see it the same way. And the reason for that really has nothing to do with Sam. It's just that, it's hard. It's really difficult to come in day one as a rookie, as a pass rusher, and have a massive impact. And I think that we all have some recency bias going on with Micah Parsons and how special he was a year ago. And I think that we think, Dan Quinn's just going to do it again. He found Sam Williams just the way he found Micah Parsons. He's going to turn him into a baller. He's going to turn him into this stud, et cetera, et cetera. And that is something that exists in the world and realm of possibilities. But it does seem just a little bit unlikely in my mind. But again, the season is about to unfold. Training camp's about to unfold. We're going to learn a lot about these players over the coming weeks and throughout the preseason and the lead up to the regular season. But a bit of an optimistic note from ESPN's Todd Archer on Monday. And Todd, one of the very best people on the Cowboys beat. So when he says something, I think it's certainly notable and significant. But he, every single beat writer at ESPN that covers an NFL team put together a prediction for this massive training camp preview piece that the worldwide leader had. And here's what Todd Archer had to say about the Dallas Cowboys. Camp prediction. Here we go. Sam Williams. And again, these are kind of, I wouldn't say they're bold predictions, but it is a prediction. So, you can't just be like, CeeDee Lamb's going to be wide receiver 1. There's a little bit of forecasting going on here. There's a little bit of intrigue. But anyway, camp prediction, Sam Williams will claim the starting defensive end spot opposite DeMarcus Lawrence is Randy Gregory's replacement. The Cowboys' second-round pick has all of the pass rushing tools defensive coordinator Dan Quinn loves to work with: speed around the edge, the ability to bend, solid hands. Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler Jr. have more NFL know-how, and while being a starter can be overrated since Quinn likes to rotate his defensive linemen, Williams' talent will get him on the field early. Look for him to come close to matching Gregory's 6 sacks from 2022. Johnny Boy RN, thanks for joining us, says, I think that would be so unfair to put that much on Sam. Rookies that come in and blow it up are a rare luxury. Again, kind of my point. It's difficult to show up and you can show up and have an impact in the NFL. Day one, I think I use this term loosely, the easiest position to do that is wide receiver, right? Not that it's easy by any stretch, but it is very difficult at certain positions to come in and be amazing right away. Pass rusher is one of those spots. Corner is another one of them. That's why we were in love with Patrick Surtain a year ago, and lo and behold, he showed up and made an immediate impact on the Denver Broncos. But I just don't know whether or not this is possible. And again, the term starter is so vague, right? Because it is a defensive end. Maybe he's the starter. He plays the first snap, and there are these platoons and waves that kind of circulate through. So if you believe it's just kind of an entitled theory, honor type thing, whatever. But I tell you what, if this happens, kudos, Cowboys, kudos, because you believed. We have all sat here and said things about the way the Cowboys drafted, the way they prioritized things, how they drafted for need, how some of these picks and selections felt like a little bit of a reach. But if this comes to pass, obviously, I think it's big news. It's a very positive thing for the Dallas Cowboys if Sam Williams shows up and is that great day one. Now, to be fair, just to the process and to kind of explore the different layers to this idea, Is there really like a lot of competition here? I mean, and I say that with full respect for Dorrance Armstrong. I think there's a lot of Cowboys fans who, again, Dan Quinn has so much, currency built up with Cowboys fans. Dan Quinn is riding on house money right now because of the impact that he had, obviously, in his first season as defensive coordinator. So everybody kind of feels like Dan Quinn can just touch anything and it's going to be magical. And so Dan Quinn can bring in Dante Fowler and it's going to be magical. And I don't know that I trust that. Dorrance Armstrong on the subject of sack numbers, and that was the line here. Let's get this up here one more time. The last line there from Todd Archer, look for him to come close to matching Gregory's 6 sacks from 2022. Forget starter, forget how you define that. If Sam Williams has 6 sacks in 2022, that's a success. That's a incredibly successful season for a rookie. I know he's a second-round pick, so you expect a lot from him, but that is a huge success if Sam Williams has 6 sacks here in 2022. But that being the case, I don't know that I feel like he has a huge threat to kind of overcome or leapfrog in Dorrance Armstrong. Stephen Jones very infamously kind of cited sack numbers when it came to Armstrong and Randy Gregory. Dorrance Armstrong's a fine player and a good player, but I like the idea of this platoon and wave and kind of group that we've talked about several times, but I do find it interesting. I find it very interesting that Todd Archer would go out kind of on a limb. It's a little bit of a bold thing to say. Like I said, it wasn't quite bold predictions, but it was something significant for him to say. So, we've been so excited about Jalen Tolbert and Sam Williams kind of gets lost in the fold. Tyler Smith gets lost in the fold. We don't even spend time talking about the team's first round pick. And so if they can derive legitimate snaps from all three of those players, their top 100 selections, then, they have full right to dunk on us for criticizing their draft process. But hey, that's that. Next up on our menu, Mike McCarthy seems very aware of his situation. What's the situation, RJ? What is Mike McCarthy aware of? Well, it's kind of an awkward season for Mike McCarthy, right? And we can sit here and we can talk about McCarthy and his resume and things like that. And I've said, for a long time that I feel like Mike McCarthy there's nothing that Mike McCarthy can do that he will get credit for. Nothing. Anything that Mike McCarthy is a part of, any accomplishment he's a part of, is immediately and ultimately attributed somewhere else, right? Oh, he had Aaron Rodgers. Oh, he took over an insanely talented roster in Dallas. People act like Mike McCarthy, that whatever success his teams have, just completely and totally happens in spite of him. Now, I'm not saying that all credit belongs to Mike McCarthy, but, he's the team's head coach, and I think he's done a lot of great things since he's been the Cowboys head coach. Now, I obviously was not a fan, just like the rest of you, of the way last season ended and the way everything kind of folded and imploded down the stretch. Definitely was not a fan of the way the team was pointing the finger at officials and things like that. And I do think that stemmed from Mike McCarthy. That's been something he has done before, even in his time with Green Bay. But he is in an awkward spot. And I don't think, if you look at just the 8 division winners, right? And I'll look again, looking at my helmet that's behind my computer here, the 8 division winners from last year: the Dallas Cowboys, Green Bay Packers, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Los Angeles Rams, the Buffalo Bills, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Tennessee Titans, and the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the Buccaneers obviously changed head coaches because Bruce Arians retired for the second time, aka the Jason Witten special. But of those 8 coaches, you would have no clue that the Cowboys won 12 games last year and won the NFC East. And I know the division's trash and things like that, but Mike McCarthy gets treated like his team won 4 games last year. He gets this rap like they are just awful and just a mess and dysfunction. And the reason for that really has nothing to do with Mike McCarthy. It has everything to do with the Joneses because, Jerry took a week and a half to have his coaches back. In fact, he took almost 2 weeks from the moment the season ended. Jerry refused. He had multiple opportunities on 105 through the Fan to throw a vote of support behind his head coach. He didn't. And then he actually kind of put him on blast and said, well, yeah, I purposely kind of left him out to dry so I could keep Dan Quinn around. Right. And so he's fed this idea. The Sean Payton thing is lurking over his shoulder. It's an awkward situation. Johnny Boyaren says, corralling the madness and normalizing the circus is a skill McCarthy will need to employ, but only winning will lower the heat. Totally agree with you. Totally agree. The Dallas Morning News had a write-up about McCarthy and this whole idea on Monday. Very much worth checking out as well. The quotes are they remind me of McCarthy's appearance on the Rich Eisen show a little bit after the season ended, but So this is the opening of the article. Again, go read and support the Dallas Morning News. And you can see there kind of a little bit down, kind of the middle of the page, McCarthy's quotes here. "It's irritating that the first question you ask me has nothing to do with how I do my job," McCarthy told the Dallas Morning News before leaving for training camp. "I show up every day for work to win a championship. How do we win today? That's what I'm asking. My viewpoint is it's not a story. It's a media-driven narrative, or at least a narrative driven outside my realm." It's that last line that I want to focus on because yes, it's partly a media-driven narrative, right? Everybody who's a Cowboys fan who has followed the Cowboys knows the Sean Payton story, right? He's the ex lurking for this ownership group, this front office group, et cetera, et cetera. Fine. That's partly on the media for conjuring that up any single time that Sean Payton's name is out there and connecting him to the Dallas Cowboys. But it is not the media's fault that Jerry Jones waited almost 2 weeks before, throwing a vote of support behind Mike McCarthy. It is not the media's fault that Jerry Jones specifically said, well, yeah, I kind of let Mike McCarthy hang out, in the wind, so to speak, while I made sure I kept Dan Quinn around. Those things are not media driven. And so, I know this sounds weird, but I feel for Mike McCarthy. I feel badly for him because this is super awkward and uncomfortable, and it's a situation that no other NFL coach has to deal with. Think about the teams I just mentioned. I know I ripped off the coaches, but the Green Bay Packers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Los Angeles Rams, the Buffalo Bills, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Tennessee Titans, the Kansas City Chiefs. Those are all, in our current moment, very stable organizations, and that includes the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, we're at a point where the Bengals are a more stable run organization than the Cowboys. And so there's seemingly nobody in McCarthy's corner, right? There's nobody who's like, man, y'all need to back off, whatever. Everybody is kind of just waiting for him to fail and waiting for the excuse to go out and pursue Sean Payton or Dan Quinn or Kellen Moore, whoever it winds up being. But it's a tough spot to be in. And again, people acted a year ago. We did shows and whatever discussions happened about the Cowboys, and people said, because the Cowboys were coming off of a disappointing 2020 season, people said, well, what if the Cowboys disappoint? Is Mike McCarthy going to get fired? And people acted like the reason the Cowboys had a difficult season in 2020 was because of Mike McCarthy, because of something he did. And look, I'm not here to say that McCarthy did a wonderful job in 2020, but the Cowboys won some games in 2020 in ways that the regime before them would not have. We saw many different times, many different instances when Tony Romo went down, Jason Garrett's staff was unable to resuscitate the season. They were unable to win any games. The most obvious and glaring example was in 2015. They played 12 games without Tony Romo and won one of them. And McCarthy, I thought, was able to make better lemonade out of the lemons that he was dealt in 2020. And maybe you don't think that means he's a great head coach, but I think that means he's a lot better than what the Cowboys have had in the past, and you would think that they would be grateful for that. And so in 2020, things were awkward and things were difficult, but he kind of made it work. And so in his only season where he's had his quarterback available for the entirety of the thing, and that's not even counting the game that Dak missed, although the Cowboys did win that last year in Minnesota, McCarthy's put together an impressive run here. And I know it was against the NFC East. I know they lost in the playoffs. I know all that. But this idea that he is on super thin ice is just really weird to me. And so I feel for McCarthy. I think he's in a bit of a Kobayashi Maru to cite Star Trek, an unwinnable situation. Short of the Cowboys winning the Super Bowl, it does feel like, I don't know. It's an awkward time, needless to say. And the Cowboys will hold their training camp press conference on Tuesday. We'll go live right afterwards to discuss everything that we heard. And I imagine that McCarthy's going to be asked about this. I imagine that Jerry's going to be asked about this. I imagine that Steven's going to be asked about this. And they'll say the political things, but they won't outright back McCarthy. That's my prediction, at least. But we'll see when we revisit things tomorrow. Last thing for us to get to, kind of short as we wrap up here, our first edition of BTB Daily. Lyle Collins was placed on the active non-football injury list over the weekend. Obviously, former Dallas Cowboys right tackle. And look, we want nothing but the best for Lyle. We want to see him succeed. Want to see him have success, et cetera, et cetera. But this tweet coming out on Monday that Zach Taylor, Bengals head coach, said that Alex Kapp will be back before Lyle Collins, and said Collins has been dealing with a back issue and that it's up to the staff to manage veterans throughout camp. And so I hate to say this is like, boom, the Cowboys made the right decision, but clearly Lyle Collins has some stuff going on, and maybe that was what the Cowboys were aware of. Maybe they weren't. Maybe it's all coincidence, but ultimately, Again, we want nothing but the best for Lyle Collins, but these feel like the things that were emerging over the last couple of years with Lyle Collins, and I hope that there's an end to it. I hope that we don't get any more news like this. I want to see Lyle Collins play and have success, like I said, with the Bengals or whoever it is, but that's just kind of where things are at. So it's a bit of a difficult shake. The Bengals have to be a little bit upset, but maybe not as upset as the Arizona Cardinals with Kyler Murray's homework clause. But as mentioned, this is the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. Please do subscribe. We'll be live every single weekday. Every single day we're going to get together live. You and me, we're going to talk about the state of the Cowboys. Sometimes we'll have people join us, so that will be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to it this season. My name's RJ Ochoa. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at RJ Ochoa, on TikTok at rj.ochoa. You can shoot me an email, rj.ochoa@sbnation.com. We hope you have a great day. We thank you for hanging out with us here at Blogging the Boys. Make sure to check out bloggingtheboys.com for the latest and greatest in the world of Dallas Cowboys news, discussion, and analysis. But that's kind of it. So first episode in the books. Thanks so much for hanging out, everybody. We'll see you next time, and we hope you have a great day.